Well, thank you for joining today's webinar. This session will be recorded. You'll receive a link via email to play back the recording along with the presentation. All phones will be muted during the webinar, and we'll unmute the lines at the end of the presentation for questions. Any questions that come up, feel free to send them in via the chat as well if you want, and we'll grab those at the end as well. So thank you very much for coming. My name is Rich Fox. My passion in my life is about contact centers. So I've been involved in contact centers for many years, running very large contact centers from an operations perspective, being responsible for contact centers from a technology and infrastructure perspective, and for the past 5.5 years, I've been responsible for a contact center practice at Evolve IP. So today's webinar is based upon my personal experiences and then my experiences with hundreds of customers over the last several years. So happy to share that with you, and hopefully you find it valuable. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges of the industry, some of the expectations we're all challenged to meet as well, and then some key steps to getting this reporting and analytics on track for you and your organization. So one thing we all love about contact center systems is they provide tremendous amounts of data about the caller's experience, the call flow, the agent's performance. A typical PBX or an ACD can produce hundreds of data elements, and often it's difficult to sort of sift through the mountains of data into just the key metrics that we need. So contact centers and those that run, the leaders of contact centers, need insights instead of sort of just swimming in that sea of data elements. And over the last several years, I've spoken with hundreds of contact center leaders and deployed to many hundreds and thousands of locations and helped those leaders make the most use of their technology here. And so I've had a first-hand experience in a lot of places who struggle to find the right metrics to manage their business. And so in many cases, that's been an ongoing struggle for years. A lot of times it's further exacerbated by the lack of organizational knowledge around contact centers or call centers. And reporting challenges continues to be one of the hottest topics when we're speaking with organizations who are looking to replace their existing technology. We just finished a recent survey of contact center professionals, and one of the top priorities for the coming year was metrics, business intelligence, and reporting. Next week we're at Call Center Week, and similarly a survey of attendees in advance of next week's show at Call Center Week also stated that improving call center reporting and analytics was one of the top challenges currently faced by those attending the show. So we're right on track in terms of this is the top of mind for most folks. So in my mind, there's sort of three distinct stakeholders in the contact center's performance. There's the customer, the organization or your organization, the enterprise, and then the employees themselves. So let's take a deeper dive. Let's start with the customer and their needs and expectations. First off, the customer wants you to respond quickly to their inquiry. They want the ability to communicate via their preferred channel: call, text, email, chat, social, whatever it may be. They want to work with a knowledgeable, friendly person who can help them and provide them with accurate information. They want an agent to address their needs on first contact. They don't want to be transferred all over the company where they have to repeat their story multiple times. And if the agent can't resolve things on that first interaction, the customer wants to know what will happen next. They also want clear expectations on when things will occur. The worst thing we can do is not address that initial inquiry, fail to complete the promised actions, and never communicate with the customer again. So in other words, customers want us to be readily available to address their inquiries with expertise, professionalism, and respect. So what does the organization expect? Now, of course, there are zillions of expectations, and every organization has lots of them. I'm just going to focus on sort of the very high level of strategic goals that translate into much more specific tactical goals. Inside each company, it's going to look different, obviously, how that gets translated. But across the board, everyone wants to deliver great service. We're only as good as our last interaction with a customer, so every interaction counts. I had a CEO for many years at a large organization I worked at, and I fortunately had the privilege of sitting right outside the CEO's desk. So I got to hear thousands of times his mantra, which was every day is game day. And so, that has stuck with me. It's one of my favorite statements, and he was right. So every day is game day, and we got to deliver every day. Maximize ROI. Obviously, it's a very broad goal. It's really meant to, means we need to hit our financial goals around budgets and, costs to run the contact center and generate revenue and cross-sell and upsell and retention, whatever it is, in your organization that is driving things from the financial perspective. That's really obviously a key focus as well. Operate efficiently. So I know, this means leveraging our resources and our staff to deliver the most impact. So in the contact center, that means having the right staff on the phones at the right time, delivering high quality interactions, offering customers, alternative means of addressing their needs, and even better, proactively identifying ways to eliminate the reasons that customers are contacting us in the first place. This too is a very broad goal and one that can get too much focus from leadership, since efficiency taken to the extreme can hinder many other goals or conflict with them. And of course, we have to be compliant with industry regulations, internal processes and procedures, legal disclosures, PCI, HIPAA, and so forth. Lastly, from an employee perspective, they're a critical stakeholder too, and obviously critical in terms of success of the contact center. Now, our employees have lots and lots of expectations too, but I'll boil them down just to a few high-level categories to keep things simple, because our focus really is on reporting and metrics. Agents want you to provide them with the proper tools, training, technology, and supporting resources that empower them to deliver, great performance. They want to be treated fairly, judged fairly, paid fairly. They want a healthy work-life balance, and they want to clearly understand your expectations of them. And they want a place they can grow a career, learn new skills, make an impact. They want a place they can continue to climb the stairs to new levels of success and satisfaction. They want to be judged based upon the things in their control, and they want the right tools and authority to enable them to achieve those goals while still meeting your organizational expectations. So that's sort of the context of how I look at the things that are important to all these stakeholders, and now how do we measure and ensure we're meeting those goals. So what are the key steps to improving your reporting? You need to understand the underlying data that's available to you and how those various metrics are calculated. For our new customers, that's absolutely critical to understand, and we make sure that the customer really understands their data and, more importantly, can properly interpret it. You need to focus on the right metrics. We have lots of metrics because there are many that are just the wrong metrics to focus on. And so this number 2 is really, we're going to spend a lot of today's conversation, tracking the right metrics. You need to monitor the results every day. Every day is game day. Not everything needs to be looked at each day, and we'll discuss which things you should be looking at and how often as well at the end. You need to consider the impact that these metrics have on your organization, your compensation, your agent's motivation. How will these KPIs impact morale? Will the metrics determine who gets more desirable shifts, who advances in their career, who gets extra perks? You really need to put extra energy into change management and communicating repeatedly with your teams about any changes, especially when it affects their career. And finally, the final step is to recognize when the insights are telling you that corrective actions are required and taking the right steps to achieve your desired outcomes. So let's delve into the details. What are the right metrics to consider when evaluating the ease at which customers are able to engage with your organization? Service level, which is my favorite metric, is very simply calculated as the percentage of inbound customer interactions answered within your organization's goals. The most common goal still in our industry for voice interactions is 80-20, or 80% of calls answered within 20 seconds. This service level goal offers an optimal balance of both customer satisfaction and contact center efficiency. I could spend a whole webinar on that topic alone, just sort of helping people understand how service level, the goals you set for yourself define higher service level goals don't necessarily mean a better performance across the board. There is definitely a balance when it comes to setting the right service level goal that gets you to the balance of satisfaction, efficiency, cost effectiveness, things like that. Now, many organizations like to use average speed of answer as a substitute for service level. I avoid it. Personally, ASA is an average speed of answer. It's misleading, very misleading. Many callers in every call center are answered right away without waiting, and many callers wait in queue much longer than that average. So it really is not indicative of the whole caller's experience. And more importantly, it ignores abandoned callers. So, it takes out of the picture all those people that you never even spoke with. And so this metric, service level, really is typically applied to those what I call non-deferrable interactions, like calls, chats, web callback, where the customer is, expecting a human at the other end of that interaction. Response time, often used for those deferrable interactions, like email, where the customer isn't expecting a live human at the other end. The response time goal is simply how quickly we'll receive an agent response. For example, if your goal is to answer emails within 1 business day, the expectation is that 100% of the emails will be answered in that time period. Now, you still need to measure how consistently you're able to achieve that goal as well. And then answer rate is another one that people just don't give enough attention to. Simply is, the percent of interactions that were answered. At the end of the day, this is critical. I mean, our goal is to address every interaction, and perhaps we don't get to them as quickly as we would like to, but do we get to them all? I typically focus my sort of secondary routing, call routing approaches to ensure that my customers get as many interactions handled as possible to minimize the abandons. In reality, all organizations have, a small percent of interactions that abandon, and that's normal. It's impractical to operate without any abandons unless you have unlimited funds or, lives are literally on the line and you can't afford, anybody to hang up. So let's talk about some additional metrics to consider along with these accessibility ones. If you want to achieve an even higher level standard, you can track service level by interval, not as an average across all intervals for a day. In other words, what percent of intervals did you hit your service level goal? In many organizations, there are periods where the call center is skeleton staffed, and the results are not very good. But when we combine those poor periods with the other periods of the day where the call center is fully staffed, the overall service level for the day hits the mark. If some organizations measure their service level by percent of our intervals, that percentage would drop. And it's a good way for you to see how consistently you are delivering your desired results throughout the entire day. It's definitely a higher bar to achieve, though. Occupancy is, after you pay your call center agents to be on the phone, so anytime not on the phone, some organizations consider to be unproductive. And that's not entirely accurate. Occupancy really is a byproduct of leadership's ability to staff the call center and set the right goals. This is another one where occupancy is directly tied to the service level goals that you're shooting for. It's not something you can control. It's not something the agent can control. It's really a byproduct of those decisions. So some people think occupancy equals productivity, but in reality, the higher the service level goal is for your organization, the lower your occupancy is. So the higher the bar is to reach, how quickly we want to get people to get answered, the more time people spend sitting at their desk waiting for their phone to ring because they can't miss, you got to get on that first or second ring. So there is definitely an interrelationship here that needs to be understood. And once it's understood, you're in a much better position to make changes by championing the needs based upon sort of understanding how those dynamics interplay. But more importantly to me, occupancy is a barometer to know how closely your agents are to burnout and morale issues. Once occupancy gets into the sort of upper 80s and higher, your agents are going to start feeling it for sure. Idle time is another leadership measure to me that gauges your overall resource capacity planning. If agents are sitting idle too much, maybe your service level goals are too high if you don't like that, or you're overstaffed, or maybe you just use that time to handle non-phone tasks. Turnover, another key measure of the organization's ability to provide strong leadership, the right tools, the right compensation. Turnover is another bellwether metric that's indicative of the overall employment and hiring and sort of staffing practices of the organization. The last two here, for those customers that deployed a workforce management solution, this is a lot easier. Key metrics include forecast versus actual volume, scheduled staff versus actual staff. We have customers using various workforce management tools. Many of ours have standardized on Monet for forecasting and real-time adherence. that are fed from the ACD. Our customers typically can achieve about a 95% forecast accuracy consistently. Having those accurate forecasts leads to the optimal schedule, aligning the staff with the inbound action with the inbound interactions, which leads to higher service levels and better customer satisfaction. Accurate forecasting is definitely a combination of both science and art, and the more precision achieved means the better strong plan you'll have for each day. Shifting gears now to measuring agents' performance, there are many agent metrics. In reality, and this is in Rich's book, there's only a few metrics that I recommend you use to judge your agent's performance. Contact quality. This is that which you already know typically comes from quality monitoring performed by a supervisor or typically a separate QA team. If the agent is wowing your customer and excelling at your QM objectives or QA objectives, what else do you want? I mean, what I've seen is that measuring quality definitely takes a top-down commitment and all too often takes a backseat to other priorities or other firefighting activities. Our customers find that leveraging call recording is the best way to get this done, since it's much easier to find the right calls to score than trying to listen live. You can find calls a lot easier, the right calls that need to be scored. And for more advanced QA teams, they find that screen capture opens up an entirely new dimension where agents can now also be coached based upon their system utilization in addition to their phone performance. So quality is key. First, contact resolution. So, number of interactions received, or resolved, I should say, upon initial contact, divided by the number of interactions. So labor is the largest cost of any call center, typically 60 to 70%. So, and every customer wants their questions resolved right away. So the more calls that are completed as a one and done leads to those exactly what you want, minimizing cost and maximizing customer satisfaction. Our customers typically capture this information from either the CRM system or through the use of disposition codes, tracked in the phone system. And finally, the last of the three is the adherence to schedule. This comes from the marriage of workforce management and the ACD. Are my agents doing the right things at the right time? So, looking at an agent's real-time state compared to what it is they were scheduled to do. Are they making outbound calls when they're supposed to be available? Did they come back from lunch late? Are they available when their shift begins? Or are they still grabbing that cup of coffee in the break room? Sort of once an organization takes a leap to the workforce management, this quickly becomes part of their DNA, and they wonder how they ever functioned prior to that. Now, if you don't have a workforce management solution, and not every organization is a candidate or can afford it necessarily, but then I use unavailability percent and the associated reasons as an alternative measure in this case. So unavailability will help determine how much of your overall capacity is actually diminished. And many organizations are surprised when they learn that their agents might spend 30 to 40% of their time unavailable to answer calls. And there's really many valid reasons why this occurs, and tracking that unavailability, allows leadership to understand how much of their capacity is, really in play to handle those interactions. I suggest many leaders sort of take a hard look at the legitimate time needed off the phone for their employees. Many organizations place sort of conflicting demands on their agents. I see this all the time. I've got to take inbound calls. I've got to place outbound calls. I've got non-phone and project time I have to be doing. And the agents are all, obviously very busy. And then when inbound calls are stacking up, leadership becomes frustrated and don't understand why people aren't available to answer the phone. So by tracking and understanding the real reasons agents are unavailable to answer inbound interactions, leadership can gain real insight into their operation. Hold time, another indicator of agent performance, includes the number of times they put callers on hold and the length of those holds. Is the agent asking their neighbor for help? Are they fumbling through your systems? Is their system running slow? Or are they just a newbie and you expect that because they're unsure of themselves and they're trying to figure out their next step? Similarly, transfers, looking at how many transfers are occurring. Are they transferring or are your staff transferring calls instead of handling them directly? Are they transferring to other departments because they just don't know what to do with them? In many organizations, there is a sort of a baseline of transfers that are sort of inherent in the organization and normal. So in that case, you sort of just look at the outliers of those folks with an excessive number of transfers. Always looking at the outliers. And then from a call types received perspective, there's another transformational piece of information. It sort of gives you insights on both the customer behavior and the agent performance, enabling your agents to track call level details about the nature of each interaction. Was it a call for a particular product, a particular marketing promotion, a billing inquiry, a product defect? Really gives you a whole new source of information for the organization. And it does sort of arm you with the actual reasons for each interaction that can be used to sort of drive feedback or drive process or product changes into the organization. I've had customers who realize certain products are more costly, certain customer types need more interactions to be successful, things along those lines. And from an agent perspective, the ideal approach is to link this information to your actual customer record in your CRM or your business application, wherever you're sort of tracking your customers. And that empowers you with sort of a holistic view of each customer, not only so your agents can provide better service because they can see the whole interaction history, but it allows you to get deeper into the understanding the dynamics and demographics of your customer base. And then missed interactions, when we deliver an interaction to an agent and they don't accept it or don't answer it, this can be indicative of people that are avoiding work or certain types of work. An occasional missed interaction is normal. If someone misses an interaction one per day, not a big deal. Obviously, it's one of those things that it's a focus for you, it's a focus for your staff. But be sure, you got to look at the norms for your teams and sort of, again, start with the outliers and look to drive overall improvements. These metrics don't come solely from ACD and often require the marriage of your ACD data with other data sources. These metrics typically align with the goals of your core functions of your organization, the call center, and revolve around your business's transactions. Common ones are cost per call, revenue per call, average call value, conversion rate or sales conversion rate, cross-sell rate, upsell, retention, all those things along those lines. Each organization defines these goals and how they calculate them. The only other consideration that I'll mention is that in many revenue-driven environments, these metrics drive the agent skill levels. So I have many customers that adjust their agent skill levels based upon their performance towards these goals. If an agent has a higher conversion rate for a particular product or call type, they're given higher priority in the queue than agents that aren't performing as well. If an agent's better at a particular call type, they get more of those calls than the other call types. It becomes an incentive system to deliver more of the types of calls where that agent can shine. But sometimes, sort of like anything else, is a double-edged sword. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy too when agents don't get enough of a particular call type to develop the skills to be successful. Customer satisfaction, sort of the ultimate measure of your customer's success or your organization's success. We're only as good as our last interaction with that customer, and they don't care if you had 6 great months where you nurtured that relationship and it became, fruitful. If that last interaction that customer had with your customer service team didn't meet their expectations, it can wipe out, all the goodwill you earned during those months of nurturing. Many customers still focus on the Net Promoter Score. It's typically captured via surveys, either post-call surveys or some other forms such as email or web-based surveys. In some organizations I meet, customer satisfaction, or CSAT, is the lifeblood and is very ingrained in their culture. These are typically more mature organizations. They've understood the power of this metric and rallying the entire company around it. I also meet many organizations that aren't even tracking this information at all, haven't harnessed this information to continue improving. I can't stress enough, if you're not measuring customer satisfaction, you need to start tomorrow. Another key measure that organizations implicitly or subjectively track, but more oftentimes don't systematically or quantitatively track this information, is employee satisfaction. A happy employee results in a happy customer. A genuine smile on the other end of the phone goes a long way with your customer. Obviously, employee satisfaction is going to be linked with employee turnover as well. So, great. Now, what do I do with all this information, all this great data now I have? Well, first off, you got to really dig into the data and understand it and not react to the data. Take some time. Put all the moving parts together so you have sort of a holistic picture of what's going on. It's like a symphony orchestra. There's lots of different elements coming together to make beautiful music. You can't alter one section of the symphony or the contact center without impacting other elements of that performance. So I strongly advise you to tread lightly, begin to look at the picture like it's a symphony conductor and then begin to make changes. I've seen many leaders react to a single metric, focus on that, and then impact all these other metrics because they weren't looking at the whole picture. That's the art of running a call center, and it's a major balancing act with many moving parts. So, what are the top considerations? Well, we have workload. The biggest driver of our capacity is our availability. The more agents that are available, the more capacity you have. So you really got to start there. What do I expect? How much of the person's day or their shift should they be available? What's the norm? What are the valid reasons that people are not on the phone? There's lots of reasons why a person's unavailable legitimately. And if you're tracking that, then you can be able to manage it. What types of calls are agents handling? What's their mix of inbound and outbound calls? You need to sort of dig in, contrast one agent versus another, listen to their calls, find the reasons these things are occurring. Are the prompts confusing? Was there a glitch on the website? Are callers misdialing you? You really got to understand sort of what's normal in your call center. Look at those attributes of the agents that you consider your top performers and how do they compare with the rest of the staff. Start with any agents who are sort of at the extremes of any metrics, those with the really high or really low numbers. What do they mean? How do they impact your goals? How do you take the right behaviors and have all your staff operating that way? If you have a really chatty agent but they get great results, is that okay? If another agent is very matter of fact in their approach and addresses the caller's needs in a very efficient way but doesn't take the opportunity to build rapport, is that okay? Which behaviors do you want to replicate to the other team members? Basically, my suggestion is to take a handful of good agents, not necessarily your top performers, benchmark what you consider the norm, and from there sort of become that conductor to get the optimal performance out of each individual so that overall the performance is harmonized. So many call centers focus in on things like average handle time as a way of reducing their workload. The thinking is if I can shave 20 seconds off each call multiplied by the number of calls I can receive, I've just reduced my workload. Great, and I can get better results. That's a good thing, right? Well, it may be a good thing if your customer is still being served, you're still completing the goals expected, and the customer is satisfied. But if you focus on average handle time, you'll often find that has a negative impact on the overall call center goals. And any kind of I suggest you avoid those kinds of efficiency measures that are outside of the agent's control. Contacts per hour, handle time, occupancy. An agent can't control how many calls they receive. Agents working different shifts are going to get different amounts of call based upon your customer calling patterns. Getting agents aligned to the inbound call volumes, your job, not the agents. And I would just say focus more on quality and customer satisfaction. I've seen a lot of organizations where this falls by the wayside, and call quality or contact quality is one of the key metrics for measure your agents. We're coming near the end. I know we're coming low on time here, so all I can say, in sort of from a change management perspective, is over-communicate with your staff. Communicate in different ways. Explain the why behind what you're looking at. Don't forget that we all see any kind of change through our own lens or perspective. I like to say we listen to our own radio station, our favorite radio station, which is WIIFM. What's in it for me? Focus on those folks that are sort of the influencers in your organization, the loudmouths, so that you can pay close attention to those influencers and get them on board. You'll find you'll have much greater success, and other people will follow suit as well. The good news is that this modern contact center gives you complete transparency of the customer experience and your agent's performance. The bad news is you have complete transparency of your agent's performance, and they don't like it. So sort of in closing, I'll say, share your data and insights with your team. Let them see how they're performing, how they perform against the rest of the team. Let them understand the calculations, your expectations, and why. And then really just establish goals. What are the minimums? What's acceptable ranges for these metrics? Segregate those expectations by seniority or position level. Use them to drive promotions, perks like working from home, or just make them a requirement to change to a more desirable shift. Basically, the more you can ingrain them in your culture and your vernacular, the better off you'll be. And over time, you can sort of raise the bar for everybody. So navigate these waters carefully, tread lightly, understand the data before you react, establish new baselines, and just introduce anything new in a very slow and conscientious manner. The last few slides, which you'll get via email, I've sort of put Rich's take on when you might want to focus in on each of these metrics. I know I ran a few minutes over, so if you bailed or have to bail, I totally get it. Let me open up the floor to questions.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
So you now have the ability to ask any questions. If anybody has any pressing questions, I'm happy to answer. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and participation. I hope you found the webinar valuable. I put my contact information up on screen if you have any further questions. We'll send out an email link that includes a recording of the presentation within the next day or so. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thank you.